So the second recommendation from the CCSSO guide about developing IEPs for English learners is that parents should be integral members of IEP teams, partners in the process instead of simply informed about what's going on or used as resources, even those are important elements of their role as well. As we've discussed throughout the series, they're an important source of data about the students and they're important partners in the process. You could look at the ethnographic interview guidance in the San Diego report, as I mentioned, as one resource. And parents' thoughts and feedback about services that are needed should be incorporated throughout the process. So some strategies for parent and family engagement in developing IEPs are providing translators for meetings with parents. That could be an in-person translator or a translation service over the phone or the internet. Consider whether translators have experience with education, RTI, and special education, and perhaps even training some translators on the state or district's RTI and special education processes and policies, since some of these things do get tricky, sort of technical, so it may be something to think about that whether there are some translators who you might engage in some of this learning about the process specifically. There are communication tools that you can create that may go a long way in helping families engage with this process. Maybe a document, a video, audio, in families' home languages if possible. I know some of you are dealing with many home languages, so we know that can be a challenge. But as possible, glossaries of key terms used in ESL and special education with definition in English and other languages as possible. That may be really helpful to some of these families engaging in these conversations for the first time. You can do structured interviews, as we mentioned, and you might consider, too, if there's a family who has a really good understanding of the RTI process, special education, maybe their kid has been involved in this for a while, you might consider having them work with additional parents. So thinking about families who really understand and might themselves serve as resources and could take some of the burden off of you all as well. Okay. The third recommendation from the CCSSO guide is to consider a student's progress in English language development related to the state's ELP standards, so the CELT, when writing academic learning goals for duly identified students. So we've discussed throughout the series, students' English language proficiency should be considered when making instructional decisions for them, both within the data analysis and in the planning for instruction. Academic learning goals are accomplished via use of language, and of course we need to also help students continue to develop their English language proficiency. So when considering and incorporating English language development into a student's IEP, your team could think about and plan ways to incorporate a student's home language, which is of course an important support, as well as other academic learning. In addition, again, multiple data points should be incorporated into progress monitoring plans, and these should include information on students' progress with both English language development as well as other academic learning goals. And note that this is important for all English learners with disabilities, even those who produce little or no oral speech. Their English language development is still an important element of their education and should be addressed in whatever way is appropriate for that student. For this recommendation, I'm going to post in the chat a couple of other resources for you. One is a website on Coloring Colorado, which some of you might be familiar with that website. They have a site that is specifically about IEPs for English learners. They have a few videos there which may be helpful. In one video, they address that often when decisions are made regarding IEP development, the disability takes precedence, and maybe the student is even taken out of ESL or bilingual instruction. But they make the point that you need strong native language skills also to help learn English and address other learning goals as well. There's a video there as well on progress monitoring, how to get data when school records are scarce, which we've talked about. Sometimes with a newcomer, it may be difficult to identify some of their information, and they talk about both conversations with parents and dynamic assessment. So that's something else that may be useful in your thinking. And here's one more resource. This is an IEP checklist from San Joaquin County based on the work of Jerice Butterfield. Hopefully I'm saying her name right, I'm not sure. And it includes language supports that an IEP team could choose to incorporate for students. So that may be something, as you're thinking about IEPs for English learners and working with a team, that may be something that could offer some additional thoughts and scaffolds to help with your planning. So just a couple of other practical resources for you to consider. So the final and fourth recommendation from the CCSSO guide on developing IEPs for English learners is that training should be offered to a variety of personnel involved in EL IEP development, including special education personnel, general education teachers, and ESOL professionals. So while including ESL experts is critical to the process, regardless of training provided to other educators, provision of training to all educators involved will greatly enhance the ability of the whole team to appropriately address English learners' learning needs. So some things to consider for training that your district could choose to provide for educators. It could include a discussion about aligning English language goals with other academic learning goals. We've discussed this with interventions and the whole SRBI process, how important it is to integrate English language development with other learning goals. So that could be something that your district could consider maybe doing some more in-depth training about. In addition, there are unique and complementary roles for English language services and special education services. And so you might talk with teams further about the ways that these roles can play complementary, can be complementary to one another. And then I wanted to post one final resource for you. So this is a link to a PowerPoint presentation, but it has some examples of IEPs for English learners. So you might find that useful as you think about developing these IEPs and some of the ways in which you can incorporate English language development. You may find that PowerPoint useful as well because they do have specific examples of how they've done that with English learners.